Okay, so BAMIDBAR. Yay, we're starting Sefer BAMIDBAR. And hearing it, it was so weird. I don't know about you, but like I went to shul, or outside shul. I've been going the last few weeks. We've had laning outside the last few weeks. At the 6:30, I don't know what they did the later minyanim. Like the 6:30 in the morning was still not bad, but it was very weird to do chazak when, nobody has heard all of laning on Vayikra. So hopefully we start again BAMIDBAR, and we'll all hear all of BAMIDBAR. Hopefully there'll be no more. We'll be allowed to at least continue these outdoor minyanim. I dread Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur at this point, but hopefully by Yom Kippur we'll be inside. I don't know. Tisha B'Av, I don't know. But we're starting BAMIDBAR. So BAMIDBAR. So, as we know, the English name of BAMIDBAR is numbers, because especially when you read the first parsha, that's basically what you are inundated with, which is counts of every single shevet, and then the cumulative count of Klal Yisrael in Perek Aleph. What is the cumulative count? 603,550. And then, as if you hadn't gotten the point, so then Perek Bet does it all over again, but this time it adds the fact that, and each tribe is by their degel, and then gives you the numbers all over again. And, it's baffling enough to figure out why we have so many censuses, counts of the Jewish people throughout Chumash, to the point where some of the Mefarshim just think there was only ever one count, and it just took months, right, from beginning to end, and therefore the count that is described at the end of Shemot is the same. The Bechor Shor thinks that the count at the end of Shemot is the same as the one in BAMIDBAR, right? Because again, we've talked about this before. It's very easy to say, well, that's not a big deal. There's a count in Shemot and there's a count in BAMIDBAR, except if you remember, how many days are there between? How many days does Vayikra take? 8.
Right.
8 days, right? So it is pretty weird that, right, from the end of Shemot all the way to the end of Vayikra is 8 days. So it is pretty bizarre that you would then have another count in BAMIDBAR, which is why, again, the Bechor Shor thinks it's one long count. Like the command is in the end of Shemot, and then it just takes months to do, and then the actual, final numbers come in as you're describing it in BAMIDBAR. But that doesn't even help you to understand why would you repeat those numbers twice between BAMIDBAR Perek Aleph and BAMIDBAR Perek Bet. So the Malbim gives an answer which I think only makes this worse. I'll be honest. Malbim says, I don't know what's going on. He says, well, it takes a long time to count. So it probably took some time between, to count through everybody. And then when they actually arrange them around the flags, so they count it again. And the miracle is that nobody died. So it does the number again to tell you that, it took a few weeks. And indeed, there's still 603,550. Now, that sounds very nice for about half a second, until you realize that doesn't make any sense. Because, it's one thing to say, I understand why you would want there to be a miracle that nobody dies. That's great. But a miracle that nobody turned older than 60 or turned older than 20 and therefore would throw off the count, right, is completely unnecessary miracle. People age. It is very hard for me to believe it took a few weeks and God had planned, when people were born, right? That makes no sense, right? That, no one has a birthday in the period, right? And then, you could of course try to defend this and say, as many people turn 20, turn 60, right? Which of course is also a completely pointless miracle, right? The only way this even makes sense at all is if you think that the Malbim is right, because then there's a point to showing, nobody died. I don't think there is a miracle that anyone appreciates that the exact same number of people turned 20 as 60, or nobody had birthdays. That's just strange. So we're back to our question. Why do we repeat this entire thing again? So my suggestion would be as follows. And this is just sort of my impressions of the Parsha. But Perek Aleph, now my impressions of this Parsha, having read this Parsha about, 3,000 times in my life or something, that's what happens, right? I don't know if you remember from last year, but this is my Bar Mitzvah Parsha and my Ufruf Parsha. So I have lain this many times. I have read it many, 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 many times. Is the following. The first Perek, the feeling you get is that everybody is counted as part of the whole. Because if you think about it, it makes sense. The point of the Perek is what, right? Why are we having a census? Now, Al Pi Pshat, those Ramban notes. And not like Rashi, to show that God loves them. I mean, maybe he does, but that's not really the point. In Pshat, what's the Pshat of the count?
We're going to battle.
Yeah, we're going to battle, and this is a military count. There's a military census. We're getting the camp ready to go into Eretz Yisrael because the Jews haven't sinned yet, so we don't know that they're not going in a few days, weeks, whatever. We don't know it's going to take 40 years, and therefore this count is going to be completely irrelevant on the military level. That's why we're counting. It's Kol Yotzei Tzava. That's why we're counting all the people who go to war, right? That is the Pshat, 22, 60. And that's why Levi is not counted, because they don't go to war, and therefore Lo Hatbak Yedu B'Tochav. They are part of a separate count and not counted by themselves. Now, it's true that each Shevet is counted individually, but the feeling you get is that, that's just sort of a way of dividing the numbers, like if you have a national census, so you count them in groups, and then you get the final number. If you just read it, right, Pasuk Bet is U'et Rosh Kol Da B'nei Yisrael Mishbechotam. Right, count all the Jews. Now they say, how do you count? Leveit Avotam, Mispar Shemot, Kol Zachar Golgotam, Yiben Hashem Shana V'Mala, Kol Yotzei Tzava B'Yisrael, Tivgedu Otam, L'Tzivotam, Atav V'Haron. Right, the feeling is you're trying to get a total number for war. Now, it's very hard for one person to count 600,000 people. So what do? You divide up the task, and you say, okay, here are 12 people who are in charge of their Shevet, and they'll come up with a number, and then you just add it. So then starting in Pasuk Chaf, or even in Pasuk Yudchet, V'et kol ha'ida hikilu be'echad ha'chodesh ha'sheni, v'atyaldu ha'mishchotam leve'otam v'zbar shemot min Hashem shana v'mala l'gulgulotam. They get the whole ha'ida together, and then they count everybody. Kol yotzei tzava, so that you can get the final number, which is v'hiu kol ha'pikudim sheish mot elef v'shloshet alfim v'chamesh mot matayim v'chamishim rather. But I think that the second parak has a different flavor, because you start off Vaydaber Adonai Moshe ve'Aaron lemor ish al diglo ve'otot leveit avotam yachanu b'nei Yisrael mineget zevilom yachanu. Each tribe stands by their flag. V'achonim keid mizracha degel machane Yehuda letzevotam v'nasil b'nei Yehuda nasham b'nei Yehuda v'tzvov kudehem arba v'shivim elef v'sheish me'at. And that number by their shevet and their degel had 74,600, etc. And I think the key to understanding why you would repeat the count is this emphasis on each person being by their flag. Because if you think about the flags, right, as developed in the Midrashim and in the Mefarshim, the flags have whatever they have. They're a flag with the color of their stone on the Choshen, or a picture that depicts the bracha that Yaakov gave them. So Yehuda has an aryeh, and Binyamin has a devouring wolf, right? A zev yitraf, and Reuven has a person with dudaim or something like that. And whatever the midrash goes on, and then they have to figure out what to do with Yosef, right? So one has a shore and one has karnei re'im. Okay, fine. Ephraim and Menashe. And I think that perhaps what the Torah is doing is highlighting the duality, which is that each Shevet exists as its own unit, with its own identity, and it's part of the whole. And it's right, they're balancing those dual identities at all times. So they are both the 74,600 people who represent Yehuda, but they're also the portion of Yehuda that is just a chelek of Klal Yisrael. And Perek Aleph is saying that one level of Jewish identity is national identity. You're just a cog in the machine. You have your component, but you contribute to the 603,550, which is Klal Yisrael. Perek Bet says, but while you're doing that, don't forget you also have a sub-identity. Right? And we know that this is true, right? We have identities as individuals, we have identities as families, as communities, and we also have national identities. And balancing those is often complex, but I think that might be the difference between Perek Aleph and Perek Bet. Perek Bet is reminding them that they have individual identities, and Perek Aleph is saying, and you're part of a collective. And I think in one of the versions of the Midrash, even the flags themselves represent that duality. Because in one version of the Midrash, in addition to the color and the symbol, it also had one letter from the name of the Avot on it. And you could only read it if you had all the flags, right? So you'd have like the Yud from Yitzchak on one, and the Tzadi on another, and the Ched on another, and the Kuf on another, which I think is the Midrashic way of saying that the flags have that dual. You remember when we were in Geneva 3 trillion years ago, right? And like every government building had the national flag and the city flag and the what do they call it? The cannon? No, what was it called? Cannons? Whatever, like the states, whatever they have in Switzerland. You remember that? They were like on every government building. We did the tour. Like there were like 3 flags on every single building. Do you remember this? You don't remember this? Okay, someone remembers this. But everyone had, because that's what they're saying, right? Is we all balance multiple identities, and flags are the traditional way of actually representing that. That you fly the flag of Switzerland, and you fly the flag of the canon of Geneva and of the city of Geneva, because you hold multiple identities together. The Netziv actually suggests that Ish al deglo be'otot leveit avotam means that the otot were even leveit avotam. That not only did every shevet have their own flag, but every beit avot, every family, had their own personal flag, which would further, the Geneva image of 3 flags really would further emphasize that. Again, so that's my overarching suggestion, is that the reason that we repeat this count once in the context of just this military census, and then again while emphasizing the degel of each shevet, is to highlight the fact that the complexity of any nation, and in this case Klal Yisrael, is that we always work at different levels and we balance those different identities, and we're supposed to hold them all together to both feel part of the collective and also maintain our smaller unit identities, and that neither negates the other. So that's my suggestion for why we do this.